3. The Day of Temptation. The dawn had long passed, and the milkmen had awakened their unwilling clients 2 hours agone before Anthony Trent finished his story. He was not a quick worker. His was a mind that laboured heavily unless the details of his work were accurate. This time he was satisfied. It was a good story, and the editor for whom he was doing a series would be pleased. He might even increase his rates. Crosby, the editor of the magazine which sought Anthony Trent's crook stories, was an amiable being who had won a reputation for profundity by reason of eloquent silences. He would have done well in any line of work where originality was not desired. He knew, from what his circulation manager told him, that Trent's stories made circulation, and he liked the writer, apart from his work. Perhaps because he was not a disappointed author, he was free from certain editorial prejudices. "Sit down," he cried cordially, when Anthony Trent was shown in. "Take a cigarette, and I'll read this right away." Crosby was a nervous man who battled daily with subway crowds and was apt to be irritable. "It's great," he said when he'd finished it. "Great. Doyle, Hornung, well. There you are." It was one of his moments of silent eloquence. The listener might have inferred anything. "But they are paid real money," replied Anthony Trent gloomily. "You get 2 cents a word," Crosby reminded him. "You haven't a wife and children to support." "I'd be a gay little adventurer to try it on what I make at writing," Trent told him. "It takes me almost a month to write one of those yarns, and I get 150 each." "You are a slow worker," his editor declared. "I have to be," he retorted. "If I were writing love slush and pretty heroine stuff, it would be different. Do you know, Crosby, there isn't a thing in these stories of mine that is impossible. I take the most particular care that my details are correct. When I began, I didn't know anything about burglar alarms. What did I do? I got a job in the shop that makes the best known one. I'm worth more than 2 cents a word." "That's our maximum," Crosby asserted. "These are not good days for the magazine business. Shot to pieces. If I said what I knew, if you knew what I got and how much I had to do with it." Anthony Trent looked at him critically. He saw a very carefully dressed Crosby today, a man whose trousers were pressed, whose shoes were shined, who exuded prosperity. Never had he seen him so apparently affluent. "Come into money?" he inquired. "Whence the prosperity? Whose wardrobe have you robbed?" "These are my own clothes," returned Crosby with dignity. "At least leave me my clothes." "Sure," said Trent amiably. "If I took 'em you'd be arrested. But tell me, why this sartorial display? Are you going to be photographed for the Great Editors series?" "I'm lunching with an old friend," Crosby answered. "A man of affairs, a man of millions, a man about whom I could say many things." "Say them," his contributor demanded. "Let me in on a man for whom you have arrayed yourself in all your glory. Who is your friend? Is she pretty? I don't believe it's a man at all." "It's a man I know and respect," he said, a trifle nettled at the comments his apparel had drawn. "It's the man who takes me every year to the Yale-Harvard boat race." "Your annual Jack party? He's no fit company for a respectable editor." "It is college spirit," Crosby explained. "You can call it by any name, but it's too strong for you. What's the name of your honored friend?" "Conington Warren," Crosby said proudly. "That's the millionaire sportsman with the stable of steeplechasers, isn't it?" Trent demanded. "He wins all the big races," Crosby elaborated. "He's enormously rich, splendidly generous, has everything. Only one thing. Drink." Crosby fell into silence. "You've led him astray, you mean?" The spectacle of the sober editor consorting with reckless bloods of the Conington Warren type amused Trent. "Same year at college," Crosby explained, "and he has always been friendly. God knows why," the editor said gloomily. The difference in their lot seemed suddenly to appall him. "There must be something unsuspectedly bad in your make-up," Trent declared, "which attracts him to you. It can't be he wants to sell you a story." "There are all sorts of rumors about him," Crosby went on meditatively. "Started by his wife's people, I believe. He was wild. Sometimes he has hinted at it. I know him well enough to call him Connie and go up to his dressing room sometimes. That's a mark of intimacy. My Lord, Trent, but it makes me envious to see with what luxury the rich can live. He has a Japanese valet, a masseur, Togoyama, and an imported butler who looks like a bishop. They know him at his worst and worship him. He's magnetic, that's what Connie is, magnetic. Have you ever thought what having $1 million a year means?" "Ye gods," groaned Trent. "Don't you read my lamentations in every story you buy from me at bargain rates?" "At a shooting box in Scotland which he uses 2 weeks a year in the grouse season. A great Tudor residence in Devonshire overlooking Exmoor, a townhouse in Park Lane, which is London's 5th Avenue. And you know what he's got here in his own country. Can you imagine it?" "Not on $40 a week," said Anthony Trent gloomily. "You'd make more if you were the hero of your own stories," Crosby told him. Anthony Trent turned on him quickly. "What do you mean?" "Why, this crook you're making famous gets away with enough plunder to live as well as Conington Warren." "Ah, but that's in a story," returned the author. "Then you mean they aren't as exact and possible as you've been telling me?" "They are what I said they were," their author declared. "They could be worked out with ordinary luck by any man with an active body, good education and address. The typical thick-witted criminal wouldn't have a chance." It was a curious thing, thought Anthony Trent, that Crosby should mention the very thing that had been running in his mind for weeks. To live in such an elaborate manner as Conington Warren was not his ambition. The squandering of large sums of money on stage favourites of the moment was not to his taste. But he wanted certainly more than he was earning. Trent had a passion for fishing, golf and music. Not the fishing that may be indulged in on Sunday and weekday on fishing steamers, making excursions to the banks where one may lose an ear on another angler's far-flung hook, but the fly fishing where the gallant trout has a chance to escape, the highest type of fishing that may appeal to man. And his ambitions to lower his golf handicap until it should be scratch could not well be accomplished by his weekly visit to Van Cortlandt Park. He wished to be able to join Garden City or Baltusrol and play a round a day in fast company, and this could not be accomplished on what he was making. And as to music, he longed to compose an opera. It was a laudable ambition, and would commence, he told himself, with a grand piano. He had only a hard-mouthed hired upright so far. Sometimes he had seen himself in the role of his hero, amply able to indulge himself in his moderate ambitions. It was of this he had been thinking when Mr. Lund came to his room. And now the very editor for whom he had created his characters was making the suggestion. "I was only joking," Crosby assured him. "It's not a good thing to joke about," Anthony Trent answered. "And an honest man at 40 a week is better than an outlaw with 400. He made this remark to set his thoughts in less dangerous channels, but it sounded dreadfully hollow and false. He half expected that Crosby would laugh aloud at such a hackneyed sentiment, but Crosby looked grave and earnest. "Very true," he answered. "A man couldn't think of it." "And why not?" Anthony Trent demanded. "Would the fictional character I created do as much harm to humanity as some cotton mill owner who enslaved little children and gave millions to charity?" A telephone call relieved Crosby of the need to answer. Trent swept into his briefcase the carbon copy of his story which he had brought by mistake. "Where are you going?" the editor demanded. "Van Cortlandt," the contributor answered. "I'm going to try and get my drive back. I've been slicing for a month." "Conington Warren has a private 18-hole course on his Long Island place," Crosby said with pride. "I've been invited to play." "You're bent on driving me to a life of crime," Trent exclaimed, frowning. "An 18-hole private course, while I struggle to get a permit for a public one." But Anthony Trent did not play golf that afternoon at Van Cortlandt Park. As a matter of fact, he never again invaded that popular field of play. Outside Crosby's office he was hailed by an old Dartmouth chum, one Horace Weems. "Just in time for lunch," said Weems, wringing his hand. Weems had always admired Anthony Trent, and had it been possible would have remodelled himself physically and mentally in the form of another Trent. Weems was short, blond, and perspired profusely. "Hello, Tubby," said Trent without much cordiality. "You look as though the world had been treating you right." "It has," said Weems happily. "Steel went to 112 last week and it carried me up with it." Weems had been, as Trent remembered, a bond salesman. Weems could sell anything. He had an ingratiating manner and a disability to perceive snubs or insults when intent on making sales. He had paid his way through college by selling books. Trent had been a frequent victim. "What do you want to sell me this time?" he demanded. "Nothing," Weems retorted. "I'm going to buy you the best little lunch that Manhattan has to offer. Anywhere you say, and anything you like to eat and drink." Weems stopped a cruising taxi. "Hop in, old scout, and tell the pirate where to go." Trent directed the man to one of the 3 famous and more or less exclusive restaurants New York possesses. "I hope you have the price," he commented. "Otherwise I shall have to cash a check I've just received for a story." "Keep your old check," jeered Weems. "I'm full of money. Why, boy, I own an estate and have a 12-cylinder car of my own." Over the luncheon Horace Weems babbled cheerfully. He had made over $300,000 and was on his way to millionairedom. "You ought to see my place up in Maine," he said presently. "Maine?" queried his guest. It was in Maine that Anthony Trent, were he fortunate enough, would one day erect a camp. "Where?" "On Kennebago Lake," Weems told him, and stopped when an expression of pain crossed the other's face. "What's the matter? That sauce wrong?" "Just sheer envy," Trent admitted. "You've got what I want. I know every camp on the lake. Which is it?" "The Stanley place," said Weems. "The finest camp on the whole lake. I bought it furnished, and it's some furniture, believe me. There's a grand piano. That would please you. And pictures that are worth thousands. One of 'em by someone named Constable. Ever hear of him?" "Yes," Trent grunted. "I have. Fancy you with a Constable and a grand piano when you don't know one school of painting from another and think the phonograph the only instrument worth listening to." "I earned it," Weems said, a little huffily. "Why don't you make money instead of getting mad because I do?" "Because I haven't your ability, I suppose," Trent admitted. "It's a gift and the gods forgot me." "Some of the boys used to look down on me," said Weems. "But all I ask is, where's little Horace today? This money-making game is the only thing that counts, believe me. Up in Hanover I wasn't 1, 2, 3 compared with you. Your father was well off and mine hadn't a nickel. You graduated magna cum laude and I had to work like a horse to slide by. You were popular because you made the football team and could sing and play." Weems paused reflectively. "I never did hear anyone who could mimic like you. You should have taken it up and gone into vaudeville. How much do you make a week?" "40, with luck." "I give that to my chauffeur and I'm not rich yet. But I shall be. I'm out to be as rich as that fellow over there." He pointed to a rather high-coloured, extremely well-dressed man about town to whom the waiters were paying extreme deference. "That's Conington Warren." Weems said with admiration in his voice. "He's worth $1 million per annum." Anthony Trent turned to look at him. There was no doubt that Conington Warren was a personage. Just now he was engaged in an argument with the head waiter concerning Chateau Yquem. Trent noticed his gesture of dismissal when he had finished. It was an imperious wave of his hand. It was his final remark, as it were. "Some spender," Weems commented. "Who's the funny old dodger with him? Some other millionaire, I suppose." "I'll tell him that next time I see him," laughed Trent, beholding Crosby. Crosby, who looked wise where vintages were discussed, and knew not one from another. A well-dressed man paused at Warren's side, and Weems, always anxious to acquire information, begged his guest to be silent. "Did you get that?" he asked when the man had moved away. "I don't make it a habit to listen to private conversations," Trent returned stiffly. "Well, I do," said Weems, unabashed. "If I hadn't, I shouldn't have got in on this steel stuff. I'm a great little listener. That fellow who spoke is Reginald Camplin, the man who drives a coach and four and wins blue ribbons at the horse show. Warren asked him to a dinner here tomorrow night at 8:30 in honor of some horse who's done a fast trial." Weems made an entry in his engagement book. "Are you going too?" Trent demanded. "I'm putting down the plug's name," said Weems. "Sambo," he said. "That's no name for a thoroughbred. Say, couldn't you introduce me?" "I don't know him," Trent asserted. "You know the man with him. That's enough for me. If you do it right, the other fellow's bound to introduce you. Then you beckon me over and we'll all sit down together." "That isn't my way of doing things," replied Trent with a frown. Weems made a gesture of despair and resignation. "That's why you'll always be poor. That's why you'll never have a grand piano and a constable and a swell place up in Maine." Anthony Trent looked at him and smiled. "There may be other ways," he said slowly. "You try 'em," Weems retorted crossly. "Here you are, almost 30 years old, highly educated, prep school and college, and you make a week what I give my chauffeur." "I think I will," Trent answered. Weems attacked his salad angrily. If only Trent had been what he termed aggressive, an introduction could easily have been effected. Then Weems would have seen to it that he and Warren left the restaurant together. Someone would be bound to see them. Then, for Weems had an expansive fancy, it would be rumored that he, Horace Weems, who cleaned up on steel, was friendly with the great Conington Warren. It might lead to anything. "Well," he commented, "I'd rather be a little Horace Weems who can't tell a phonograph from a grand piano than Mr. Anthony Trent who makes with luck 2,000 a year." "I'm in bad company today," replied Trent. "First Crosby and now you tempting me. You know very well I haven't that magic money-making ability you have. My father hadn't it, or he would have left money when he died and not debts." "Magic?" Weems snorted. "Common sense, that's what it is." "It's magic," the other insisted. "As a boy you exchanged a jackknife for a fishing pole, and the fishing pole for a camera, and the camera for a phonograph, and the phonograph for a canoe, and the canoe for a sailing boat, and so on till you've got your place in Maine and a chauffeur who makes more than I do. Magic's the only name for it." "You must come up and see me in Maine," Weems said later. "Make your mind easy," Trent assured him. "I will." End of chapter 3.